you go from somebody who's like, I don't have those skills, I've never had those skills, I'm never going to have those skills, to very high functioning creative person, all with one word from God.
Why would anybody quit a job that provides all this comfort? And you have 3 kids.
So in the midst of building a business, which does require hours and effort and turmoil and some tension with the risk, our kids aren't sacrificed.
Right. And I think that was what gave us also so much strength and the ability to endure, was a track record with God.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Sarah. And last year we started our business By Design Homes, which includes design and construction, midterm rentals, and staging.
And on this podcast, we will be talking to other business owners about how they are creating unique and impactful businesses while building and managing their own lives and families.
Along the way, we'll share our journey as business owners and a busy family of 6.
We hope that you join us to learn and grow and discover new pathways to building life. Welcome to the David and Sarah podcast. Welcome, Dustin and Alisha, to the David and Sarah podcast. We are so happy to have you guys here with us today. From when we first started the podcast, you guys were always on my mind as someone to have on, for a few reasons. One, you're the coolest people that we know. So that's just a fact.
Nice.
And
we got that on recording. Nice.
That sound clip is going on all of my social media.
Yeah. There it is. Sure. That's just over and over on repeat. And it's like, on one hand, you guys have this amazing journey we'll go through from, Oklahoma to Texas, and one of the most sought after surgical assistants to this amazing now video and media firm. So you've got that journey, but then also you guys are some of our closest friends who our kids go to the same school together, and we carpool, and so we see each other every other day. And so like all of that was like, this is going to be a good conversation. And so we thank you guys for taking the time out and to have the conversation with us. So
of course, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're stoked this is finally happening. So
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So let's start with where I kind of started. You guys are before Mass and Gravity Media, before all of the where you guys were at from a medical field. I think starting the conversation back in Oklahoma, where did your journey start that then led you to where you're at today?
Well, I went into the mall one day with the guys that I played music with, and this story must be told.
Oh my God.
I wasn't sure if we were going to get there, but I'm excited now.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know we were going to go this far back.
We were hoping.
Well, I'll fast forward a little bit and just say it basically started with a very nice conversation and a very sweet young lady saying, "Are you going to get my phone number or what?" And I said yes.
And that was Alisha.
And that was Alisha.
And here she is. Yeah.
And here she is.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
Don't ask me.
Oh,
I'm the worst with the dates.
18
He's better
years
with the
ago.
dates. Yes.
Nice.
That conversation happened. 18 years and a couple of months. It was, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in Oklahoma. So that's where I met him, in Oklahoma. And then, we got together, we started dating. We knew pretty quickly that it was going to be for the long haul. This is real.
You kind of liked each other a little bit. So that's,
She's okay. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. So
I could see it.
After we got married, we kind of, I was in ultrasound school in Oklahoma, and Dust went to surgical tech school there as well. And out of school, we were trying to figure out where we would live, because where I was at, it was really flooded. The market was flooded for ultrasound tech. So we had to start really kind of figuring out what God wanted us to do. And
well, it was also 2008, and the financial collapse was in full effect. Yes. And I had a pretty good job. Actually, it was a really good job. But the city we were living in was not doing so hot in general. And there were 0 job prospects for Alisha. And so we were stressing out. And then at the same time, this is when we bumped into the Congress. Yeah. And it was just like this big, there was a huge paradigm shift in me that got us to the point where basically, we felt like we heard God say, "You guys need to move to Texas." And 2 weeks later, we lived in Waco.
Yes.
That's pretty fast.
Yes. It was really quick. Because we met our, Ian Chellen, our pastor, in Oklahoma, and he was in Dallas, and we knew we wanted to be connected to him. So we wanted to go straight to Dallas, but there was no job opportunities. The whole, you need experience before you can work here, but nobody wants to give you experience type of thing happened.
Yep.
So we knew it was God just shutting some doors. And so the closest we could get was Waco. And it was great. We were there for about 2 years. I got the experience I needed. But in that time, God really began to work on us together and our marriage. We call it like our desert experience, because it was a lot of God breaking down old historical patterns, old mentalities, and bringing us up together. So it was intense. It was an intense couple years of like building us and building with God and building with Ian and the church. And so we finally, the 2 years were up and we were able to go to Dallas. And so we connected to our now home, Ian and you guys and all of our friends there. And that's how it all really started. And that was
13 years ago.
13 years ago. And we finally got to Dallas.
Yep.
Okay. And so what, you talked about Waco being intense and things getting built. Like what kind of things were getting built inside of you guys that kind of provided the foundation that you stand on now?
Well, I think she made a major statement in there that he was sort of getting rid of historical things. I think that was the moment where, he sort of made us aware, I got you out of Egypt and now I'm going to get the Egypt out of you.
Yes.
Right.
And that's,
he has a fun way of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there was a lot of stuff in there too about, historically, things within our families and the way like the dynamic between the husbands and the wives and not necessarily that they were like bad or wrong, but that's not what God had for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was developing a new ethic inside of our house and developing a new structure that would lead to a greater level of life. And I think that's some of the big things that we got out of Waco.
I think a lot of what he was showing us is what it really meant to be a woman and a wife and a mom and a husband and a man and a dad, and it was like a 40-year journey tied into 2 years. It was very intense. Like I had to be broke and Dust had to, come in and teach me how to see him accurately, see manhood and a husband. And it was all new, like I was the whole independent woman idea that, my generation had to be broken. And so it was a lot like that. There's so much that God did, but it comes down to, he just needed a clean foundation to show us who we really were and that old things that we thought were correct were not, and it was just the starting point of what he was going to do.
Yeah. I love that about the journey, about how that works, where, you can end up in a situation that feels not ideal. You want to be in Dallas.
Yeah.
You know that this is where you want to be connected to people. You know that isolation is not where you want to be.
Yeah.
But God's like, hey, I need you guys to go through a journey. I need you guys to go through a level of development and change, because what I have for you next needs a different foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not if you haven't made migration into who you were called to be, then I can't build on top of that foundation. And so it's like, go through those iterations, see the season for what it is, so that way you can fully get developed inside of that, and then you can go on to the next thing.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and his grace and mercy, like, looking at it retrospectively, God had so much grace and mercy for us in that time, because like you think about it, we got married in March of 2007. We met Ian, bumped into Congress October 2007. February 2008, we lived in Texas.
Yeah.
That's so fast.
And so it's like he gave us this time of, how it was 7 months of our honeymoon period where he like basically didn't
put his finger on too much.
He didn't require this giant change for 7 months. We had this time where we could breathe and relax, and then he's like, all right, time to get to work.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like a recurring theme through our entire journey, is like you can really look and see God's grace and mercy, and how he's created a space for us to thrive and find immense joy inside of all of these crazy seasons. And we've been through some crazy seasons.
Yeah. So then talk about the transition. So how did you go from Waco to Dallas? What did that process look like? And start us off from that point in the process.
Well, you could definitely see, like, Dust has always had favor wherever he goes, like, and it's great. But especially in his job field, in the medical field, like, anytime Dust needed to find a job quickly, he was able to do that. So we started looking, and so Dust got a job first, and we moved. I didn't start working for about 6 months.
Which was another process.
Yes, that was very difficult.
Like, it was so funny because right before we moved, we heard from God, like, Alicia's not going to work for a while. Try as you might.
Yes. He shut doors again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, we were like, okay, let's just do it. It'll be fine. We'll make it happen.
Yeah. And so I stayed home, and Dust worked, and I kind of worked on getting some of my certifications, like for ultrasound, and things like that. But I think God was trying to continue to remove things that didn't belong. And so for me, I've always taken pride in any job I had. Like, I try very hard. I care about what I do, no matter, where I work or whatever. And so when I did ultrasound, even though it was only the 2 years, I just was so passionate about it. Like, it became an identifier of who I thought I was. So God had to be like, whoa, this is not who you are. This is just a tool for what I want to do. And so that was a process for me. And God, has done that even further. As mass and gravity media is not medical. So, like, God has continued to work on that process for me personally, on what work really is and what jobs are and things like that. So for 6 months, it was hard, but it was fine. And Dust worked. I stayed at home. And then eventually God said, okay, it's time for you to go into the work field. And so I did. I started working at one of the bigger hospitals in Dallas, and I got to do so much. And I really enjoyed it. Dust continued to do extremely well in surgical tech field at numerous hospitals. And as you said, like, he's always had favors, so people would request him. Like, he was always one of the requested people for the surgeons to work with. And again, I think that ties to our work ethic. And we love people, and we care about what we do. So that, and then we're here now. So the really crazy part is we did that for how many years before we even started touching video?
Well, okay. So in total, we were both working in the hospitals for 15 years. Okay. Probably did that before. I mean, I was kind of always a little into photography. I did some photography in high school, and like as a hobby, kind of here and there, and always sort of, I really liked it. I liked the art of photography, and so I think that my hands were kind of on, art for a very, very long time. And I think that, like, what's really interesting is, when Alisha and I met, I was a musician that played in a band. We like toured all over the place. I painted. That was like my favorite thing in the world to do. I love to paint. When we started this journey and God moved us to Waco, I could feel that thing got put in a box, and he was like, you can't touch that. That's been defined in an improper way in your heart, and you can't touch it. It's not yours. I'll give it back one day, but you can't have it right now. And so I went through years of feeling like, even though I still wanted to, I still tried to paint, I still tried to do some photography stuff. It was like stifled. Every time I turned around, it was stifled. There was no creativity. There was no like spark with it anymore. Not with music, not with any of it. And so as we like walked through this journey, and I started doing more, I've done sound inside of our church since we moved to Dallas. So that was, for 13 years. And then, so like, it was almost like a little bit of that kind of got to come back, but then like it was just not it wasn't that thing, and it wasn't the time for the like that creative spirit to be properly defined inside my heart.
Right.
And so like as we walk through this, I start to do more photography inside of the church and video inside of the church, and then I think it was when and David and I both served on a team where we would support churches in our network in Latin America, and on one of those trips, I could it was like I could feel God like open that box and slide it across the table. And he was like, okay, let's start to look at this. And that was really what it felt like, was let's start to look at this. Don't open the box. Just take a peek inside and let's start looking at this. And then so that kind of started my journey of what it would look like for me to be, you know, to draw on the creativity that God had, you know, that was like a gift. It was like a gift that my whole life I've been like that. And it was like, how do I now draw on this from a more accurate position as a man? And so then that kind of started the process. Unfortunately, I don't know what year that was.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think that was a time. It definitely happened in a time in our lives where I was working outrageous hours in a hospital. We had little bitty babies, and it was we were running hard. And so it was almost 10 years ago, but not quite. Maybe not. Maybe like 6-7 years ago. Anyway,
I'm terrible with dates, so if he doesn't know,
but that's when you were kind of like, oh, this video creative thing has come back to the surface as something I can invest in.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then there was I remember working at the same hospital system that Alisha was working at, and you know, praying about all of these different things. And, you know, God told me, I'm going to give you permission to leave this system. Right. And like almost immediately, I had a distaste for my job. Almost immediately. I mean, I went from like totally loving this job and enjoying every aspect of it to almost overnight, it was hard, and it was almost like a burden. The problem with that was wrapped up in what he said wasn't, okay, let's go, let's do it
and
right
now.
now.
You can quit.
And now you can leave.
And so, you know, as we continued to like prayerfully consider what that might look like and all that, it was years. I mean,
literally years.
Yeah. 4 or 5 years before I actually left. And so, but it was, you know, as challenging as it was to continue to work in a field and work crazy hours and be on call and, you know, spending like way too much time away from the family with this job that I no longer love. It was a good time for us to take those things to God and like find out, you know, who do we need to be to step into the next place? Right. What is the next place? What does it look like? And then, let's see, probably 28.
Well, and just, you know, before you jump into like and then there's mass and gravity. I mean, so you're in there and you're not satisfied. You and I had multiple conversations during that time where you're like, I would like God to say that it's time to leave. And he is very clearly not saying that. And so you had a lot of self-restraint, but you know, it's not like you weren't good at your job and weren't being successful. Like you were really good. Can you just, I know you don't love to just talk about yourself, but just give us a little bit of sense of like,
best.
As the mug says.
I continued to excel in what I was doing. And I think that I have always kind of had like a love for excellence. I do enjoy, like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be good at it.
Right.
And especially if, you know, that job specifically, that fell into my lap. Like God gave me that job. We were dating and I was like, well, I can't just be a musician if I want to take this seriously. And you know, my mom has been a nurse forever, and she was like, hey, I think I could probably get you a job, you know, mopping floors or something at the hospital. I'm like, let's go, let's do it. And as I was working there, I just sort of like, you know, I got into the OR and I started, you know, sort of like as a helper, just moving patients around and stuff in the OR, and sort of kept climbing up. And I found out that the hospital used to have this program where they would send people to surgical tech school. And I'm like, well, I want to do that. And they're like, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I pestered this lady to no end. And eventually I heard they were like, well, they're going to send a small class. And I was like, well, I'm in there. That's mine. And I continued to just pester. And finally, when they opened the class, she called me and she was like, hey, you never left. You know, you were diligent. You're the first person on my list. And so I went to surgical tech school completely for free. The hospital paid for the whole thing. And it was like the best school in the area. And it was awesome. Everything about that. And everything about that, like, you know, at the time I was a 19-year-old kid who I don't know anything. You know, I didn't know anything about the kingdom of God at that point. And looking retrospectively to see how God had me.
Yeah.
Like before I even was given anything back to him, he had me. Yeah. And walked me through that. And so, you know, this job is something that the Lord gave me. And especially as we got closer to that end mark, that last 4 years where I really didn't want to do it anymore, I was very aware that I was working in that job because God brought me there.
Yeah.
Not when I didn't know when I got the job, but when I was nearing the end, I was well aware I am here because he brought me here. And so inside of that, it's not like it wasn't easy to operate with excellence, because I do just like to work in excellence. And also I know that I'm doing this because God brought me to this place, but I have knowledge of the fact that I'm just like that. It's like surgery was my Egypt, like my second round Egypt. And I know he's going to break me loose. You know what I mean? Right. But I'm still gonna make these mud bricks and do these things to the best of my ability while I'm here. And one day he's going to set me loose.
Yeah. It's so key to be able to have a clear sense of what God is saying in a given season and what that looks like, right? Like even going back to, you know, Alicia's original, like, hey, I have to not work for 6 months when we first move up here, and then you're stuck in this job. It's like in the middle of that, like it reminds me of even the beginning of this season, like this, call it summer, fall for us this year, where life is fine, job is fine, everything's kind of going all right, and God just kind of drops in me. He's like, this is going to be an intense season. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's okay. Always... I mean, it feels fine right now, but this is what's going to be. And then a working situation came up where I ended up having to take a consulting job where it was in Houston. And so suddenly I am, you know, going to Houston every other week for 3 days a week for 3 months. And so from home every day, I'm working from home, you know, here with the kids and all of that. Yeah. And suddenly I am very gone and not around. And a lot of things kind of, you know, that put some pressure on the situation. But I didn't fight it, right? It's like when it came up, it was like I didn't go, oh, I don't want to do this. Let me get grouchy about it. It was, no, I know, like God told me in advance, this is what's going to happen. And so I think that helped our interaction because it required sacrifices by Sarah. Like Sarah had to sacrifice more because I'm not there. Kids in practice, sports things, leaning on family and friends to help us, including you guys, just to get people to places because I'm not there. So, you know, it's just interesting. It's like the clarity of hearing allows us to engage with a season differently. And I feel like more productively. It's like then you're not fighting. You're not like, why is this happening to me? And trying to fight your way out of it. It's like, no, if God put me in this situation, right? If God put me in the wilderness, then go through the wilderness. Let it develop you. Let it cause you to grow. Let marriages develop out of it. So that way, when you come out of it, again, you've got the foundation for that next version of you and that next thing that he wants you to do.
Well, and like another piece of that is like, so he gives us this word that this season's going to be intense. And we initially thought it meant like the business and, you know, Aaron personally likes some things, like he was just going to like really dig into some things. And it turned out like it was external, it was work, it was his consulting. And then it was also like the staging. And I was working like, I don't know, in that 4 or 5 months, I had, I don't know, 6 or 7 staging jobs and doing things that I hadn't done before, from that sense. And like, So it was like intense all the way around. And then the things that we thought it was going to be, it wasn't. And so having to like adjust and go like, oh, this is all of us. This isn't just like his process he's going through or something, but it was for both of us to journey together, and then to bring the family alongside as well. And like, it was all of us walking through this intense season together and growing and maturing and seeing God along the pathway.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is sometimes you don't know what God's developing in you or what's being developed in the process, right? Like, Sarah's talking about suddenly, like for most of our married life, we're coming up on 23 years in January, right? We've been, I'll call it more traditional. I worked, she stayed at home with the kids. Right. That's been our mechanism for life. And so she's been doing bookkeeping, as kind of an add-on, I would say. And so then the staging thing came up, and staging and design as a business is suddenly growing. And so we were able to lean into it because we knew it was a season of intensity, which was great. But then it was like last week where suddenly it was like, oh, also a piece of what God's saying is the literally the dynamics of your relationship. Who carries what weight which way?
Yeah.
This next season looks different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the work that Sarah's doing isn't just a nice thing for her to do. It is a piece of the foundation going forward is for her to carry some additional weight in terms of work and production and those kind of things as he's slowly migrating us towards, like in our minds, this future place where, the By Design Homes business is the thing that we do together. And then you can see God like putting some blocks in place of how we interact and how we grow and how we make the right kind of space for each other at the end of the day. So that way each of us can like fully be who we are called to be in terms of production and personality and character and output and all of those kind of things. And it's but it's a real clear process that if he would have just told us at the beginning of the summer, hey, this is where we're going, I think we would have manhandled it a little bit.
Sure.
And so we got there. So
I think that's very true. And like our whole journey is like, I've always been able to tell God, I'm all about it. Whatever you want me to do. I just need to hear your voice. Yeah. As long as I can hear you every step, like there's no point of fear, and like you said, the disgruntled spirit inside of you, like it's not always perfect. Obviously, there's still going to be some intensity and some stress and wear and tear. But at the end of the day, like I just ask God, I just want to hear you and I'll keep walking. Yep. And it's like he's done that every time. It's like, we can hear you. And it's like, as soon as we start to just be like, oh God, I just need to hear you one more time, please. Like we've had some points where we've had to go in our car and just yell to God, I need to hear you. I'm going to do this, but I need you, and God's always honored that, he's always said, okay, as long as you're obedient, I will guide you, and we hear him. And so I think that was a lot of what's helped us through those last few years, because to be honest, I hadn't heard that yet. So for Dust to be like, oh, I'm thinking about leaving the medical field, I'm just like, okay.
Yes, we are.
That's working really well.
Yeah, I had to then start being like really listening and being like, okay, God, is this for real? Or is this a dream? But he did answer us. And when did you start like kind of working by yourself a little bit inside of video production?
Yeah, how did you actually start to transition? You're sitting there in I want out, but I can't get out.
Yeah.
Of this job.
What's really the crazy part is I remember being at the hospital at work, and he was like, "You're going to start a business," and I was like, "I don't know about that. Maybe we should. Maybe if I send that one back, maybe that'll be okay." Because I don't want to do that. That didn't sound like a good time at all. And so like I kept like taking that back to God and praying about that. I'm like, business, like, what do I know about business? I don't know anything about business. And I think that he let me think for a little while that I was going to have this like audio based business.
Right.
And we kind of like toyed around with that. I actually went and did some stuff for different facilities and like sort
setting
of,
up sound system for churches.
Yeah.
Stuff
I
like that.
did that. I did stuff for some like some local venues that just needed new sound systems, and I like totally reset them up. And you know, I was already good at that from doing it at the church for so long. And so I was like, this is great. I'm just going to do this. And at the time, I was pretty decent at photography and not good at all at video. And he was like, you're going to do this. And I was like, ah. And so that started this whole journey of me being like, okay, I actually think I would thoroughly enjoy that. I just don't know that much about it. So let me just start building the technical side of that thing.
Right.
And I'll just keep walking with God, and we'll get where we're going to go. If he said I'm going to do it, it's just like you were talking about earlier. He didn't take us to the desert to die. He's not going to throw you in the wilderness without the tools to succeed. So if he's saying this is where I'm going, well, I'll just start walking, and eventually I'll get there. And so that's kind of just what I did. And I would do stuff here and there on the side. And then some of the doctors that I worked with at the hospital had like seen some little things, like some of the photos and little videos that I made. And they're like, hey, you should make a video for my practice. And we did a small handful of those. I should say I did a small handful of those because Alisha wasn't involved yet. And like really enjoyed it. And I got better with each one. And I thought they looked, even looking back on them now, they didn't look that bad. They're just getting there.
You had some natural talent to start with.
Well, I think that the painting has a lot to do with,
the eye.
Yeah.
The
eye.
Yeah.
The thing that I was not good at was like the technical side of it, which I have a technical mind. So like if I come up against a wall like that, well, I'm going to solve that. That's not a problem. And so, we kind of started doing that, and then like we started to build this business. And initially I was building this business different than the way that it looks now. And I remember God coming down in my car and being like, everything you're doing needs to stop. You have to build this business with your wife. And I was like, she's not going to want to do this.
I did not want to do this. No way.
But
God, you may not be aware of my wife and what she thinks about things, but let me tell you, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well.
Are you sure?
Her. I only have one. So, so I sat and prayed about that. Governmentally by myself. I was just like, look, I'm into it. But I just don't know how this is going to go over.
Yeah.
And so, I basically canceled all my previous plans, which included other people, and there was challenging conversations and things like that. But I mean, when God talks, you just do it.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
But I think that, one of the things that we've talked about before is like, I think that one benefit that I have that can be challenging in interpersonal relationships, but is a benefit to me in my spiritual walk, is that I see things pretty black and white. Like I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. There's not really a middle ground. I'm not going to, be like, well, like, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll turn back. No, we're going to go or we're not going to go. And so, I'm already on this path, and there's no scenario in my mind at that point where I was going to say, this is too hard. I'm just going to go back to the hospital. Like, no.
Yeah.
Well, and I was still at the hospital. We were just like theoretically building these things. And so anyway, I take it to her. She's like, yeah, okay. And I think that was another process that we kind of had to walk through with God. Well, and then so we start to, we get our LLC in 2020. And so January 2020, we get our LLC. And we start building with Larry and Lizzie at Orchard because we know zero about business, and so who better to go to than the master, And so we go sit down with Larry.
Yeah, and probably just a quick reference there. So Larry and Lizzie Brown, those are my parents. So they run a consulting firm called Orchard Industry, and as a piece of that, they help entrepreneurs who are starting a business walk through a process to get the foundations right. And those foundations tend to fall into two main buckets. One main bucket is just the practical aspect. LLCs and EINs and taxes and bookkeeping and like the structure, right? So you've got to have that. And I think the second thing is that process that we went through with them as well, right, is the importance of getting foundational things like the values and the vision and the what you're trying to accomplish, the things that create kind of the boundaries of, hey, we're doing the right thing because we know this is the foundation of this business, as opposed to just, I'm going to go throw something against the wall and start doing some work, right? Like, so you have some of those foundational conversations. It gives God a vessel to talk into, and then you walk out of it going, oh, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and therefore that gives us some of the guardrails and the boundaries of all the decisions that come up in the future with building a business. So that's when we talk about Larry and Orchard, that's what that process is.
Orchard plug in here.
Yeah.
Orchard plug in here.
And they're incredible. That I think that part of our process of starting to work with Orchard was key in getting to where we are now. Not only because we didn't know what we were doing, but to have people that we know and trust and love and part of our community have their fingerprints on the things that we're doing has been something that God was very interested in since he first started talking to us about building our business. And so
and at this point I'm part of the business now, but my assumption is I'm going to help with management and, sending emails and scheduling and, all that side of things. So,
because you're still at the hospital.
Yes.
So was I.
And we're both in the hospital.
You guys are both still working and in the medical field.
So this is still a nice, safe environment.
It was syrupy.
It was just like, okay,
it was like getting into a warm bath.
Yes.
You were just
I can administrate some stuff. That's easy.
This is great. There's no pressure. There's nothing.
Yes.
And then November of 2020, it's like right after Thanksgiving, maybe. It was like near the end of the month, November.
God started to really speak about my role. Because I'm still thinking I'm just management, and God finally, he gave Dustin the title for me as the CCO, the Chief Creative Officer. So when you hear that
does not sound like management.
Exactly.
Yeah. So doesn't sound very administrative at all.
So when you hear that, you're just like, wait, what? So it was like this huge mentality shift because, when you hear something like that, you have to go to God and see what that means. Yeah. And one, Dustin, musically inclined, he can play all these instruments. He does, paintings, and he's just super creative. And I knew that when I married him. Alisha, never in a million years did I think I was a creative person. Right. And so once this happened and God told me you are creative, it was like he just opened up this massive journey through my life of being like, oh, I guess that is creative when I did this, and this is creative, and I do like doing this and all this stuff. So I started to actually see where I was creative. It just definitely wasn't an identifier or a character trait that I thought that I had. So it was something that really, really just completely changed my mentality right then. So right then I realized, along with the CCO title, is we were no longer going to be, Dustin does everything. I just help a little, like 10%. It was 50-50. Yep. God said that. You are going to be 50-50 in this business. So this business now took on a whole new meaning for me.
Yeah, so you started thinking about it, carrying it differently, processing differently, seeing yourself in it differently.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that's
good. That time, I started to get into the actual editing side of things. Yeah. So when Des would be editing, it's like you watch and you're like, okay, I can do this. Hold on, move over, let me try. And then I fell in love with it, and just like piecing together a story, and all these things came out. So then that aspect of it came. But first, I had to become before I could do. So God told me who I was, that I was 50-50 in the business, and that I was the chief creative officer. So I had to become, and then I could go and do. And that's when I started to help with editing and directing inside of some of the shoots that we had as well.
Most of the shoots, and she's an incredible director. Yeah. And like window into the future, she does like 90% of our editing, and it's excellent. You go from somebody who's like, I don't have those skills, I've never had those skills, I'm never going to have those skills, to very high functioning creative person all with one word from God.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
And then so shortly after, God says Alisha is the chief creative officer.
We're still in kind of a cooler area of the pool, a little bit deeper, but still not too deep. I can still reach the bottom, so it's like 4 foot. Okay,
we're looking at beginning of December 2020. Larry calls us. He's like, "Hey guys, we've got some stuff we want to talk about your business. Can we do a Zoom call?" We're like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's always great.
Everything is going so good. We're going back from that lukewarm spot. We're gonna go right back to that warm spot. I can feel it."
Yeah.
And we get in this call, and he talks to us about some like very practical things and all that. And then Larry and Lizzie are like, "So we heard God for you about your business, and he really wants you to take a leap of faith, and that you're gonna have to just quit the hospital, and just jump in."
And of course, when they said that, it was like, obviously the fear came, but it was like, we knew.
No, it felt right.
We knew.
Yeah,
God had been trying to tell us. Like that it was coming.
Like, no, that's not what he said.
In my mind, the whole like, okay, he's going to quit his job once we pay this bill off. Once we do this financially.
It'll be like a really nice, smooth transition where it's like, I make this much.
Yeah.
And then this is the business. And then it's going to be like, whoa.
It'll just balance out. And then we'll be perfect.
It's going to be great. It's going to be, we'll never leave this warm side of the pool. Never.
So when she said that, it was just like kind of like a child, like, dang, you knew you got caught.
Yeah,
you knew.
Busted. Like,
you knew. So
you weren't quite getting it. So we brought Larry and Lizzie to you to tell you.
Exactly.
Well, and then so, I go and chat with Ian. I just called him. I called Ian and I was like, "Hey man, I need you to really pray for me. I need some sight. I need some structure. I'm a little bit not emotional is the wrong word, but like, I don't know that I'm going to hear God super correctly right now because it's the noise happening in my head. That's called fear."
So at this time, we have 3 kids.
Yeah.
We're in the medical field. We have insurance. We have, all these great
so cozy.
things.
So nice and cozy.
So when that word hits and you're just like, wait, okay, you look at this on the world view and you're like, why would anybody quit a job that provides all this comfort? And, you have 3 kids, so yeah.
Yeah. And so I call Ian and I was like, "Hey, this is what's going down. I just want you to pray for me. I'd like to get some sight on this." He's like, "Yeah, man, just give me some time, give me a day or two and we'll get together." And then my phone rings 10 minutes later and it's Ian. He's like, "No, man." He's like, "This is right." He's like, "You can't start the new year in the hospital."
Yeah.
So I put a timeline on it.
Yeah. He's like, "January 1st, you have to be out of there. You have to just be in this." He's like, this was very clear. And I was like,
and again, we knew.
Yeah. And I was
we
like,
knew.
Mm-hmm. And so now I've got like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
a 15-year career,
Yeah.
We heard God and he told us. We heard God and he told us this is what he wanted us to do. And this was a 30-year career. I mean, a 15-year career.
Felt like 30.
Yeah. So it was exactly that. It was a leap of faith. It really was. And, so we did. We said, hey, on your birthday, which he's a New Year's Eve baby, on December 31st will be your last day. And it was his last day.
It was. I'm trying to find this photo. I'll insert it later. Bam.
Yes, of his last day.
I took a photo walking across the...
we got to get it in there.
Yeah.
The air bridge on my very last day where you can see the sign of the hospital. And that was it. And it's like I was saying earlier, it's one of those things where I think that, like, I thank God that when it comes to certain things that I can just think in black and white because, but so he was so adamant. And even us taking it personally to God, it was very clear. December 31st was my last day. It was clear from our leadership, this needs to happen. And it was urgent. There was like this urgency about it. And so we just did it because we're just going to do what God says. Yeah. And we're just going to trust that this is the right move and that's what we're going to do. And so January 1st, 2021 was my first day full time. And I think I went on a hike with you guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all of us. The whole
All of
family.
us. Yeah.
Our New
And-
Year's
Not just
Day
Dustin.
night.
Yeah, not just me. And
Dustin and the Browns.
Dustin and the Browns. It still would be a good time.
Yeah.
But where was I going with this? Oh, and so everything is going great, and we've got a couple of clients lined up already. That's like it's really this is good. This is going to be great.
I am in the hospital still, but I'm not working. I'm not full time. I'm PRN, but I'm getting enough hours that I'm pretty much part time. So it was doable.
It was working out great. Everything was going. It was going really good. And then in the end of January, we found out that we were pregnant with number 4.
Yes.
And realized almost immediately why he said, you have to go now. Because he had Johanna in his mind.
Yes.
Right.
And the moment we found out we were pregnant, I would never be leaving that hospital.
I mean, it would be hard. It would be so hard to go. I mean, from, the whole insurance thing, everything that's required, all the doctor's appointments, all these things that were going to happen. My flesh, I don't know. I don't know if I could have been like, yeah, Dust, you quit your job, your full-time job so
giving us all the stability.
I thank God, because I don't know what our story would look like if that had not happened, but thank the Lord that it did.
Yep.
But it was, again, a really intense season. So Dust kept working full-time in the business, but I worked part-time. I was able to get some insurance, working part-time, which that was all God again. Right. But it was just, it was really hard. It was not a time, we were no longer in the kiddie pool, in the warm pool. We had taken a plunge, and it was even harder because, you're about to have this baby. I'm a planner. I love to know what's going to happen. And God, that's not one of my identifiers that he wants for me is to plan. God likes us to be flexible, So it was a year of like deep partnership with God, with each other, and collaboration with others. When we started to think about mass and gravity and the business, that was one of the big words that God used was collaboration. We knew we were going to collaborate with a ton of people, and we have, and we continue to. But that's kind of what has allowed us to go through this journey is the people we have around us, our family that is praying for us and standing with us. Why the world is like, why would you leave a comfortable job when your wife is pregnant? But the people around us knew that we heard God, and they prayed alongside us, and we just continued to go that route. And even when it did get hard, God was always there. And again, that's the time that I said you would hear us screaming in our car, being like, God, I can keep doing this. You just need to talk to me,
Right. You just have to say so.
And
because
he did.
We're at this point where, like, I'm still less than a year out of the hospital. I still had hospitals calling me being like, hey, just come work over here.
Right. Oh, so it was an easy.
There was an easy button. There was an easy button you could have pushed.
There was an easy out. There was an escape hatch.
Yes.
And not only would it, because they're offering me more than I was even making before.
Yeah.
It's like, there was the easy button was on the desk.
Yes.
And so we just keep going back and saying, look, if this is you, you just need to say so, because I'll never turn back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to say so. And he always said so. He was always present. There was never a point that he wasn't near us in this situation. Yeah. Never. There was never a point where we felt like we were crying for his voice and he didn't speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 What I'm struck by is just the beauty of the process of multiple factors coming along to support you while going through a hard journey, right? It's a hard journey to take a risk, a leap of faith, to quit a job that is providing stability and do that. But in the midst of it, it's like you weren't alone in that process.
Yeah.
Right.
And you weren't alone in that process because of how you positioned yourselves. Yeah. Like you didn't go into hunker down, fear, isolation mode, right? You had interaction with leadership in your life, and leadership who you had built a relationship with, who you had been interacting with. So that way, when they said, hey, this is what God's saying, It wasn't someone out of the blue that you don't have a relational backing, that you don't know loves you and has your best interest at heart. You knew all of that. There was a foundation for those words to be communicated that wasn't just random prophetic word. It was these people who we love and are in relationship with, they've heard God. It hits us differently. Yes. And then you had the internal maturity to go, hey, let me look inside. Is my what inside of me is saying? Is it saying that's wrong? And you're like, no, the inside was saying that's uncomfortable, but also clearly right. Yeah. Like both of those things are true. And so you had that created a platform for you to be able to take a leap. Yeah. And that you can look backwards and go, oh, God's wisdom, even though we are people who hear God and would always say yes and would always do what he wants, he didn't put you in a situation that was even harder, which was to hear that while pregnant. That's he's like that's too. He's like, I got you guys. Like I can give you this when it's easier for you to handle. That's the right amount of pressure. Yeah. It's not too much. It's not going to create too much of a burden. Yes. And it's like that. Yes. That creates a foundation. And I also was thinking about it, what strength that gives you in terms of going forward. Yeah. Exactly. Like this story, this story of a journey is like, there's nothing that could come against you that you can't go, no, we can handle it. Yeah. Right. And not because we're amazing, but because we got a track record with God, and we have a track record of collaboration with leadership, with the friends we have around us. Like, we're not on our own. Like, there's nothing that can come against us that we don't have the ability to overcome.
Yeah. And we have a God that's right here. Yeah. And so, I feel like there's never been a thing that we've come up against that was like, this is a total shocker. Like God didn't in some way prepare us for this. Like, I don't feel that way. That doesn't mean it was all easy. Like, there were tears shed and hard conversations that had to be had and all those things. But, he didn't lead us to the desert to die.
Yes. Right. And I think that was what gave us also so much strength and the ability to endure was a track record with God. I would governmentally pray and be like, God, I saw you do this and this and this in my life. Yeah. I know that what you're saying is going to come to pass. I know that where you're leading us is good. And, all these things, because I could look back on everything God had done in our lives, and he was always there. So I think that that's what helped us go through this period of time. And again, looking back, it was building a foundation for our business and who we are in our business. Like God, we have gone to God about like who is mass and gravity and what culture and core values and things that those that he has called it to be. And so just seeing all this process and who he's called us to be and he created us to be and he put us through the fire and, we have become, and it's so that we can be this couple that can run mass and gravity the way God wants us to. Right. Again, it was just like the whole Waco process. He had to strip so many things, when God tells you to do something, there's so many assumptions that come with that just out of your flesh, like, oh, this is going to be this way or this way. And God's like, no, you can't put me in a box. So it was a process that we continue to walk closely with him through our finances. But at the same time, anytime he told us something about the business, who the business was, even if we didn't see it, because of our personal process with him, it allowed us to build things inside of our business that we probably wouldn't have been able to do if we didn't have that personal process with him.
Yeah. Well, and I think the same thing is true for us, like by design and, even this podcast or whatever we build, it's off of Aaron and I and how we build and how the journey that we've been on and the values, like even our core values as a business are built off of our values as a family and what we believe and what God has put inside of us. And so that's what comes through in our homes and in our lives and in the businesses that we build is what he's done inside of us. And so that same thing with you guys, you had to have this foundation built inside the two of you, inside the Wilsons, to be able to actually launch, Mass and Gravity and and have that stable foundation to build on. So, yeah.
And when we do it that way, it's like also things like our kids aren't sacrificed. So in the midst
Right.
of
Exactly.
building a business, which does require hours and effort and turmoil and some tension with the risk and all of those kind of things, like because it's coming out of our own development in and maturity and character, our kids aren't sacrificed in it because we got our priorities are right and our sense of what needs to be built is right, and so we continue to make sure that we're not leaving them in a corner while we go make some money. Like that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We're building a life.
Yeah.
The business is a component of the life. You know, Alisha, back to you talking about how the tech was initially a part of who you are. And it's like the work gets put in the right box.
Yes.
We have work, but we are not by design homes. You are not mass and gravity. Mass and gravity is something that's being built in the context of an overall built life that includes healthy parenting and building of one another, and that flows out of that. But it doesn't become your definer where your sense of success and failure is based on the external metrics of a business, because that makes you not stable in the way that your family and that your kids need you to be.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, man, the one of the biggest blessings to me about this big shift was I went from working 14 and 16-hour days, being on call a lot, and not being able to go to a lot of stuff, to like I have more time with my kids now than I've ever had. It's crazy. Like, I mean, and then I get to build my business with my wife. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Who you still like even from the first time. You're still it's still great.
Yeah.
I would still get her phone number if she asked me that right now.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah, and then like it's fun because like our business meeting lunches and our date nights like externally look the same, but then the conversations are like wildly different. But it's still great. Like, you know, I still get to build like all areas of life with this wonderful one.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I mean, you just can't underestimate the joy that comes from like there's no kid event that I don't ever have to miss one ever again. You know? We'll just make sure that's on our schedule and schedule around it, you know? And I don't know, the freedom that it's given me in that area is incredible. Yeah. Incredible.
It's that whole thing. So I've been in the business full time now a year. So God, you know, a year and a half. So, and that was, again, like I said, it was a really hard thing for me personally because I loved what I did. I didn't have a distaste for the medical field anymore, you know, like Dustin. Yeah. Like I didn't have those feelings. I still loved it. I love what I do. I love working with the patients and, you know, the doctors, everything. It was really great. So when, you know, God said it was time for me to quit, it
was hard for different reasons.
Yes. I did it, but I could see like that if I didn't quit, it was like, you know, the image of, you know, God asking for you to give him something when he has something so much better behind him.
Like just waiting. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can't grab hold of that because you're so busy hanging on to something else. And so that's exactly what happened. I quit, and it was just like Dust said, the ability to be home with the kids and our lives have completely changed. Being in the medical field, you are set hours, you are on call sometimes, you know, holidays, all this is kind of like totally different. Whereas this has allowed us to put our family in a whole nother place. Our kids, the way we do school is different because of our jobs, you know. Yeah. All these things have come, and it's just been so beautiful to see what freedom and things that I never thought I would want, much less would be so amazing for my kids and for us. And we have the freedom to be creative too. You know, like our jobs are so creative. We get to be around people and all these things. And it's just been such a great journey because it's like God spoke to us to move to Waco, from Oklahoma, I would have never saw this journey.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's really great. And I think this is fun, kind of walking y'all through our journey to see it for ourselves too, because it has been such a beautiful process.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so much, you can just hear so much gratitude, right?
Yeah.
As far as like just the gratitude of where you get to be now and the lives that you guys get to live because you've faithfully gone on the journey you were supposed to be and become the amazing human beings through that process. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So Mass and Gravity today. So you guys you've made it out. You're full time. This is what you guys do. Yes. What do you guys do? Like what kind of work is Mass and Gravity? Who are your clients? Like what have you guys built at this point in time?
So it was a really great way to segue from the medical field into video by doing a lot of medical video. So our bread and butter is, medical and corporate video. We do like promotional videos for doctors, for practices, and then we do a lot of educational content.
Yeah, pharmaceutical, medical device.
Surgeries, things that people want to give patients information, but video is always going to be way better to give that information instead of them reading. So we do a lot of that, testimonial videos, things like that. So it's really fun to use our medical background and help with the video production as well, because there's times where, especially Dustin, he gets to go into surgery again. It's just now he's not helping the docs with, the surgery. He's capturing it and, all this. So it's a funny segue that was very, very natural.
Yeah.
And we've been able to work with some of the docs that Dustin worked with in the past, but we've also grown, to get our own clientele and we've gone into the corporate field as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's easy to say that we're a video production company. Like, that's what we are. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, like we're a people company. We like people.
Yeah.
And the medical stuff is not all we do. It was an easy place for us to transition where we can say, we have something to offer here that most companies don't have.
Yeah.
Is we're good at video, but we also have this foundation of healthcare experience that allows us to operate efficiently and effectively inside the content that you need.
Yeah.
And so that was a good transition for us. But we do video for all sorts of businesses, all sorts of
needs.
All sorts of needs.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, like we're a company that focuses on people and that we're trying to, I mean, it's in our name. So Mass and Gravity Media is I say we chose that name, but we really didn't. I got this image in my mind while we were praying about this business and all this stuff. And all I could see was like the weight of your life. Like I could see a person and like the weight of the things that they've built. And it just like, it got people's attention. And then I could see like, it was like planetary physics, right? So Mass and Gravity Media is the relationship between mass and gravity. The greater an object's mass, the greater its gravitational force. And so, we, under the surface, we're a company that goes in and we pray for the people that we're working for. We ask God to give us a prophetic view into the things that they're building, even if that's not the thing that they're asking for. They're asking for, ROI. They're asking for, better sales. They're asking for whatever. They want better training videos. But we want to see what it is that God wants inside of these businesses, inside of this situation, inside of our interactions with these people, that we can take the mass that they've built in their own personal lives or in their, the journey of building their business. And how can we take that and make it an effective tool to further what they're doing?
Right.
And use, the voice of God and the mind of God in those situations to be maximally effective.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for us, what success looks like is when we have a client that wants a promotional video and they just need us to help them get out in front of clients. But what we do is during that process, we talk to them, we hear their story, their seed of what they even first started to see as whether it be becoming a doctor and working in the medical field, or a company, whatever that seed looked like, we like to talk to them about that and see their journey, and then be able to create a 1 to 2 minute video that encompasses all that. And, you know, there is an art to that. It's a storytelling thing visually and, you know, going through their story and helping put the pieces in. So for us, when they say that was amazing, that was so easy, you guys made me feel so comfortable, you told my story better than I thought I could, you know, those are the things that we want to hear. Those are the successes for us. And then, you know, they're shown to their clienteles or their patients, and that's somebody you want to go visit, you want to go see because you heard their story. You feel like you got to know them, and they're not just a picture of a doctor with their this, I went to this school, I have this accolade, you know, all these things. We want more than that. So I think that that's where like the art and the creativity comes that we're able to do, but at the same time pulling out things prophetically of a person's story and who they are and the mass that they've built over the years.
I love that about what Mass and Gravity does and what you guys do. And because at the end of the day, it's about people and it's about interacting with other humans on this earth. And how do we help them? And how do we create spaces and images or videos or whatever that are going to bring them life and tell who they are. And I think that's one of the things that even with what I've been doing recently with like staging just consultations where I'm not actually physically going in and moving things or shifting things around. But my hope and my intent when I go in and meet with these families is like, I want to help them. Like, I understand moving is stressful. We had to do it quite often and in a very short period of time. And moving is stressful. And there are a lot of pieces involved, especially when you've got families and kids and all of that. And so even if I'm just writing down, hey, practical things of move this or shift this, the heart and the desire behind it is I want them to succeed. I want them to feel like they have a pathway to success and a pathway to move forward that's going to bring them more life, whatever that may be when they move. And so like the heart behind it is helping people, and that's the heart behind By Design and inside of our houses. And so I just love that, like that we share that core value in how we build our businesses and how we interact with our clients is that we want to help them and we want to see them succeed and continue forward in their own journey. So
well, I have to jump in and say that our experience with By Design Homes and Sarah was, it's hard to explain. I don't think that it's, so Sarah and By Design Homes staged our house a few months ago when we were selling it. And it's not really a secret that I never really liked that house. But I have to say that, you know, after Sarah and her crew came in, I loved it. And it actually, I was surprised when we sold it, which we sold it in 4 days in a market where the average was 35 days. Sarah and Lizzie. Let's go. Lizzie Rock. That's a tip right there. But I was sad to see it go. And I think it was because of what Sarah had done there. Like, she turned that place into something special. I'll put photos in here. She did an amazing job, and we cannot thank you enough. It was incredible.
Thank you. Well, it was easy to do because you are like the coolest people we know. So,
remember.
And you had a great background of stuff to work with. So
I don't know, man.
I love it. And I love the collaboration, right? This has happened on another episode as well. It's like, so we know each other for all these reasons, but also Sarah helped stage your house. Also, Mass and Gravity does the editing of the David and Sarah podcast.
Right.
Also, like there is, so I can see Dustin's, production mind is going in the background. Oh, I put a picture here. I can change this. Like I can see it going.
I have a lot of inserts for this episode. I think that the audience will be very pleased.
I'm sure that they will. I am sure that they will.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, as you guys are talking about the back to Mass and Gravity and the heart of it, I think, Alisha, I can completely relate to your I'm not a creative person side of things. Like I'm a computer engineer, engineering bachelor's degree, like linear, directive, ABC, like that was my identity. I'm that kind of person. That's what I genuinely thought. And it's like, as over the past several years, God has just slowly chiseled away at that, going, like whatever that archetype of a person is, like that is not actually who you are. Like you don't fit in that box, which is, fast forward to, the creativity involved in construction and design. And it's not like Sarah and I have an interaction where Sarah's the only creative person and I just like put up the framework of it. Like even as we're talking about the marketing aspects of how we work on By Design or work on the podcast, it's like because God has chiseled away at that in me, it's like now I feel much more confident in going, no, this is what this needs to look like. This is what this needs to be like. This is how it's going to communicate and connect with people. And that's why like our first three, people who have been on the podcast have been design firms, architecture and design firm, video production, like it's all creative industry stuff. Yeah. And I think it's because what really registers, I think, in all of our hearts is the impact of, if you mix the right heart, connection to people, pulling out stories, you mix that with excellence and skill in media and design and all of that, what you get is something that can impact people much greater than just words, impact people much greater than just great design, right? And I think it's going to be, we won't go down the AI path, but because we could go there. But it's like, that's going to be the difference is anybody can go on Midjourney or DALL-E or whatever and create a graphic and a picture with a few words. Like the initial spark of creation of something, that will be easy. But what will be different about things like what Mass and Gravity produces is the genuine authenticity of the heart behind it will come out and will be visible. And that's something that I think can't be replicated. I think it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so just a second on AI. I actually think it's a good thing.
Gosh.
And I think because of what you're saying, it's a good thing, because like, let's say it'll be a good thing if we don't ever get to like the Terminator level, but like
it would be
fair. Or iRobot.
Or iRobot, But
wasn't iRobot was good, I feel like, at the end of the day.
Well,
that's true. Good. But it was just the one.
The brain.
Just the one. The one outlier was fighting the whole system.
Okay,
the brain.
The brain was bad.
Spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen that movie now, like, you're never going to watch it. When did that come out? That came out 20 years ago.
I don't know.
It's been a while.
So anyway, AI. What do you think?
Yeah, but I think like where we sit right now, I know that there are a lot of creators that are really nervous about AI. And I think my encouragement to them is see how you can use it to improve your life and your workflow. Because there is certainly a way. It doesn't have to be one of these things where like this thing is going to replace me. If you sit back and worry that this thing is going to replace me, it probably will. Right. But if you just advance with it, like learn with it, grow with it. Like not everything we're going to get from it is good, but that doesn't mean there aren't good things you can get from it.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. Again, like at least at this point in time, when I read an article, I can tell like that someone went to ChatGPT and said, please write me an article on this. Right. And I can read, I can tell, right? But at the same time, I use it for the YouTube descriptions that we've got for this podcast to do the initial, because it can produce this much content, and then I can go through and I can make it, like I can add the authenticity to it, but it can make me more productive and it can move the ball forward in terms of the speed of that. And so I think I agree. It's like you got to stay with it and use the tools. But if you are developing yourself and growing and building skills and those kind of those things will continue to be valuable and continue to have a real impact for sure.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, like AI is the least impressive it's ever going to be right now. It's only going to be more impressive from here. There's going to be a point where you can't tell that it was written by an AI. You can't tell that that's not a real photograph or this isn't a real person in this video. We're definitely going to get there. I can't imagine a scenario where we don't.
Right.
But how then does that affect my life, and how can I use that for positive change in the things that I'm building? Because you could just let it all be negative, but then it's just all negative, Yeah. And I think that if we are not preparing ourselves for these things to get to the point where that they're eventually going to, then maybe you are going to feel really negatively about this, and maybe knowing that it's going to get to a point where it's going to be imperceivably different.
Yeah.
I think if you know that, it changes how you're building now and what you're building towards. And so, yeah.
AI.
AI.
Well, I think to wrap it back around to what we're talking about is, it gets back to if you allow yourself to get fully defined by the specific task that you are doing, then you are always at risk of disruption, both disruption from a career standpoint, but also internal disruption. Because you're like, I do this kind of graphic design. Oh, now in Canva, I can say, please make me this. And it just shows up, and it's maybe as good as what I was doing before. My identity's been altered. But that's like what you guys have described. Like your end work product isn't the video. Yeah, there is the video. But your end work product is you've had an impact on people. Because of the mass that you've built inside of you and how you've interacted with them, and then your ability to then pull that out and tell a story. And so even if some of the tasks and some of those things get more automated and all of that, like that's fine, because that's a part of the journey. Keep learning, keep growing, stay with it. You've got to do those things if you want to grow. But the core value, at least the things that beat in the fore of our hearts, right, has to do with how we're able to impact people, how we're able to help them with where they're at in their journey, continue to develop and continue to move forward. And regardless of the tools or the automation or the AI, like that doesn't change. The ability to have that kind of impact doesn't change.
Well, I think that there's like a really deep message inside what you're saying. I think that, that could be an exhortation for people to say, if you find your value is placed in the things that you do and in the things that you produce, you're wrong, because your value is inherent. Like the things that that qualify you to be where you at aren't the things that you make and the things that you're good at. It's who, it's just who you are. It's who you are. Like God loves you because you are who you are. Like because he made you, because he loves you first, and then all these other things. And so I think that, like, the disruption is not just AI based. You think about like our industry. Have you guys seen the previews for The Creator?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, so The Creator is very disruptive in our industry, because typically Hollywood level films are filmed on cameras that are $60,000-$70,000 just for the camera. Each lens is $20,000. It requires huge teams to run these things. The Creator was filmed entirely on a prosumer grade camera that cost $3,500 that I could take you down the street to Best Buy and buy right now. And that's because things have gotten that good.
So
Yeah, they're just that good. And so that's disruptive to people who have built entire careers on, I know how to operate this $60,000 cinema camera because there's not a ton of people that can. And, or I'm a key member of this crew that can operate this thing. It has now been proven that a blockbuster film can be filmed on a prosumer grade camera, and nobody knows the difference. They can't tell.
That's wild.
As a matter of fact, there were people trying to disprove that they actually did this until they let all of the behind the scenes clips out. People were like, no, they didn't. They didn't film it on that, but they did. And it, if your internal like value or like how you value yourself is wrapped up in these things, you're set up for failure because there's always going to be disruption.
Well, not only that, when God tells you you are this, then you're so rigid that you can't become what God needs you to become. So if I just continue to say, no, I am an ultrasound tech, this is what I've always been, like the beauty of life that I have now wouldn't be here. Right. My children wouldn't be who they are today from my process. This, that God has taken me through when he told me that. When he called me creative, the business, Mass and Gravity, wouldn't be what it is today if I allowed myself to be rigid and in a box and so tightly grasping old culture, old identity, that I wouldn't be able to be flexible and be who God has created us to be. We have to be malleable, that. I think that's definitely something that we as the Wilsons, want to always be for God. We want to be flexible. Yeah. And so it seeps into every aspect of our life. So,
Well, I think for me too, like recently, I growing up, all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And that was I didn't have I'm going to go to school, I'm going to do all this. I just wanted to be a mom. And so, wish granted, I am a mom of 4 kids. But so having over the last couple of years, this transition of going to school to be certified for staging and then doing stuff with Orchard, and I help them with bookkeeping for some clients, and so I have that kind of running alongside, and even as you mentioned earlier, just kind of the shift in the weight of so if I just stayed in the I'm just a mom, it doesn't give God and me the ability to grow and mature. I've put the box of mom, and so that I only can do these things a little bit. And God's you're not supposed to only do them a little bit. These are supposed to shift. And so, whereas mom is still obviously a very high priority in my life of who I am, it's just these other things God's actually bringing them to the surface even more. And so it's been this kind of new discovery of going, well, I'm not just mom. I am also a stager and, and a partner inside of By Design Homes and what we're building and doing. And so but I have to be willing to journey with God and letting go of my kind of definers and letting him continue to define me and who I am and what he's called me to be and do. So then that way I move and I grow, because otherwise I'm just going to stay here and he won't be able to do all the things that he wants to do inside of our family and inside of, our lives and in our business. So,
Yep.
Beautiful journey. Beautiful journey, Wilson family. I think that is good. I think that was a great. Thank you for breaking that down and letting us kind of go with you on that journey to what has built Mass and Gravity, but more importantly, what has built you and your family into the people that you are today. So thank you very much for being on with us, and that'll be it for this episode of the David and Sarah podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys.
Yes, thanks.
Hospital that she worked at. It's a large university hospital here in town. What is that?
Oh, is it because
you put a thumbs up?
See?
Okay. Okay, start over.
Cancel. What? Don't put your thumb up.
Good to know.
I am totally leaving all of this.
Wait, can we do this? Does it do this one?
Okay. Get it.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh. Man, this is too much.
Look at us. I feel so old right now. We're look what our computers can do.